presence. This passage in Hebrews says that Jesus has called us equals with him. I have trouble with that. Do you? Am I God's equal? Well, not in the way I normally think of it, and yet God takes me as an equal to God in worth, in value. Not because of anything I am, but because of who God is. Indeed, this whole exercise of the incarnation is about our reconciliation, our at-one-ment. In the King James Version, folks were working on this translation of the Bible into English. They actually weren't translating it, as we often say. Their commission was different. It was to look around at all the various translations available in the English language and to find those attempts at translating the Bible that were the best of all the options available. And in one particular passage, the term reconciliation kept coming up over and over and over, and they turned to this word they found in one of the texts, at one, which meant to bring warring parties together in peace, getting rid of the conflict between them and to reconcile them as friends. At-one-ment was to do this, to accomplish this uniting of us, though we were at odds with God. The story of the incarnation does not begin with a baby born in comfort, in wealth, in the palace, who then has to figure out how to relate to humanity. It's not a prince and the pauper story. It's rather God being born as the common person, as one with no privilege, as one member of an oppressed people under the thumb of Rome, as one of the poor ones among those oppressed people. And in the stories of Christmas, we hear how those who should have been more worthy in our eyes of having God being born among them, how they make themselves at odds with God and God's purposes. Rather, this high priest has become one of the lowly, that we might grasp the depths to which love would take us, to reconcile one and all, despite our categories that might separate us from the worthy and the unworthy. But then he goes further. And he says that this high priest does his work through suffering. He says this at the beginning of the text, and then again toward the end of the passage he repeats it. That it is through this suffering identification with those of us in the greatest need that he takes our side, that he becomes one of us, that he allows us to understand the depths of God's grace and love and desire to make us one. His